Welcome back to Hannity. DHS Secretary John Kelly was on Fox & Friends earlier today where he gave a sobering assessment of the terror threat Americans face. Take a look.
We've had 4 major terrorist attacks in a week in 4 different places, obviously Manchester, Egypt, Philippines, and Indonesia, by generally the same groups. It's nonstop. The good news is for us in America, we have amazing people protecting us every day, but it can happen almost here anytime. I was telling Steve on the way in here, if he knew what I know about terrorism, he'd never leave the house.
My goodness. President Trump has made fighting terrorism a key theme during his first foreign trip. So what can we do right here at home and abroad to combat extremism? Joining me now is the host of The Next Revolution, which launches on FNC on Sunday, June 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern, Steve Hilton. And author of the new book, The Ranger Way, Living the Code on and Off the Battlefield, Kris Paronto. Pleasure to have these two gentlemen here. I feel confident we're going to get to the bottom of it with the two of you here. So, Steve, congrats on the new show. We can't wait for that to get started. But in the meantime, what can we do here at home and abroad to combat extremism?
Well, I think that Kelly's exactly right, and it's really helpful, I think, to have someone as serious as that in charge of the fight against terror, who takes it seriously. Because I think what you've seen over the last few years, and it's not just here in America, but in the UK too, is there's a lot of talk about fighting terrorism and people agreeing about how serious it is. But if you look at what's actually been going on, it hasn't been good enough. Now, let's just take Manchester. Obviously, it's still very fresh, and there's a lot of grief and anger and pain. But while we should reserve most of our anger for the militant Islamists who actually did this terrible thing, I think some anger also needs to be reserved for the authorities. Because actually, if you look back at this guy, just as with so many of these attacks, it turns out that he was known to the authorities. He was actually complained about to an anti-terror hotline, turns out, about 6 years ago. There's warning after warning. He was traveling around to Libya, Syria, and he slipped through the net. So there is something going wrong with the way we're approaching this. And I think that what I'm really pleased to see is that when President Trump and Secretary Kelly and the administration really are putting this at the top of the agenda, saying they need more resources to fight this threat, that should be reassuring. And there's one final thing, is that actually what America did after 9/11 was really important. The way that actually everyone said, look, there's something serious went wrong here. We need to really investigate it, review all our procedures and processes, the way we fight terrorism. That hasn't happened in the UK. And I think that America, therefore, despite these growing threats, seems to me to be in a stronger position today, exactly as Secretary Kelly said, than anywhere else in the world, despite the rising threat that we face.
All right. Well, Kris, it sure seems like, President Trump is very aware of this. He's aware of the threat here. He's aware of the threat abroad. Yes. He made this a key focal point of his campaign, and it was part of the thing people want: make America safe, national security focus, and foreign policy. He emphasized that when he was away on this recent trip, strong messaging saying, drive them out.
And that's what you need to do as a leader. You have to show strength. The past 8 years, we hadn't had that. We were leading from behind. President Trump is putting us forward. We're leading from the front again. And we're just putting more focus. He's on the law enforcement. And immediately after the attack in Manchester, he threw the special operations community into work, and the SEALs went out and did a raid. So sometimes you have to do that an eye for an eye. And I like that he's doing that. Also, though, we need to, and this goes back on the leaks that we've talked about, the CIA and the NSA need to get their folks back on fighting terrorism and less on being in the political agendas and political arena. And that's where I see we need to actually concentrate more and actually have more of a focal point. And President Trump can do it because he's got somebody great as a CIA director right now in Mike Pompeo. Sure. And that needs to be a focus where we are not succeeding at, and that is CIA and NSA really not doing their jobs, which is combating terrorism as more than leaking and being in the political arena. And that's bothering me a little bit. Yeah,
it's bothering me too. And Steve, when you think about this, the UK got upset with us, said they weren't going to share the intelligence because, loose lips sink ships, and we were having a problem over here. Now, they then went ahead and said, okay, we're back on board together, and it was just a matter of hours. But nevertheless, wow, what a bad reputation to have. We see these leaks now affecting our international diplomacy and cooperative efforts to combat extremism.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that it seems to have been resolved. and that's good, and we've got to move on. And I totally agree with what was just said about how we need to get back to the real business of fighting these terror networks. But I think the other thing I'd say that's a real refreshing change in this administration is that you've got a president that has put really good, qualified people in charge and seems to trust in their professionalism. It seems to me they're really working as a team because he's empowered them to do the right thing. He's not being micromanaged for political ends. He's actually putting good people in charge and letting them get on with the job, and seeing his role as president is to give them the support that they need, and especially to get them the resources that they need. And that's a big change from what we had before.
Yeah, most certainly. You know, Kris, what else can we do here, you know, at home? Nobody likes that feeling of just being like a sitting duck and just, you know, waiting to get picked off.
Well, that's part of terrorism, is striking terror in the hearts and minds of yourself. So take it down to a personal level. Just stay vigilant. Go about your daily activities. Don't worry about it. Don't let the terror affect your daily lives. You can't. That's what they're trying to do. But also, we have the greatest law enforcement in the world, and rely on them. And President Trump backs the law enforcement. And I agree with Steve. I mean, I don't even know why I'm even here. He's saying everything that I would like to say. But yeah, he is. But you know, law enforcement's out there, and they're the best, and they've got our backs.
And we got to back them up too. And President Trump is prepared to do that. All right, we want to keep our relationship with our allies very strong as well, like the UK. Gentlemen, such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Congrats on the show again, and don't forget to get Kris's book. All right, arrange your way. All right.